Hello and welcome to The Agenda. I'm Stephen Cole. As Lebanon fights to fend off total financial collapse, this week we have an exclusive interview with the governor of Lebanon's central bank, Riad Salameh. Lebanon, once the jewel in the financial crown of the Middle East, is now facing what the World Bank has termed one of the worst financial crises of the last 150 years. So just what has caused that? And how can the country return to the kind of financial stability for which it was once famous? And if it can't, what impact could that have on the region and indeed the rest of the world? Joining me now from Beirut is the man who's been the governor of Lebanon's central bank for almost 30 years, Riad Salameh. Governor, in charge for 30 years, is this the worst crisis you've faced?
It is indeed a deep crisis. The central bank has used all its tools to moderate the impact of this crisis on the Lebanese population and on Lebanon. But this crisis has its roots in the special situation in which our country is. And this situation has built up since the start of the Syrian war in 2011, and it was followed by, in 2017, by seeing the twin deficit in the country increase. This means the deficit in the budget was increasing due to the increase in the salaries of the public sector, but also our current account was deteriorating. The imports in Lebanon between 2017 and 2019 amounted for $65 billion, which is a huge amount for Lebanon, as you know. And this has depleted the country of its foreign reserves. So in 2019, we have seen a series of negative events. It started with the designation of a bank on the OFAC list. Then it was followed by a revolution in the streets of Lebanon, which led to the closing of the banks and triggered the cash economy in the country. It was followed in March 2020 by the government declaring default on the payments of Euro bonds. The COVID had its part also. And then you had the blast of the port in August and a vacancy in the government for 13 months while we needed badly to have a government in order to lead the country out of the crisis. We do have now a government that is seeking negotiations with the IMF in order to try to find an exit to this crisis.
The economy shrank by an estimated, I think, 25% last year. The Lebanese pound, which was pegged to the dollar at 1,500 to the dollar, now trades at about 21,000. Annual inflation exceeds 100%. These are just terrible numbers. I mean, you're fighting hard to save the economy and save the banking system. Do you think you're winning, or is it just too much of an uphill struggle?
It is a struggle, as you described it. We don't say we are winning, but what we are saying is that we are moderating this crisis. The inflation could have been 5 times more than what you have described. In fact, what the central bank has done is to sell dollars still at 1,500 for the major commodities that the country needs, like fuel, wheat, medicine, and some food stuff. It has done that because previously and by anticipation we had accumulated good reserves in foreign currency at the central bank. Of course, now the central bank and the government have agreed to go more toward the market to fund these products, but we are still, like for gasoline or for medicine, we're still selling at 1,500. This to describe to you the flexibility we have been able to initiate and to safeguard our system, because in fact the system is still here. No banks were bankrupt, not because of to save the banks, but to protect the depositors' money. So we have acted in a way to gain time in the hope that a real solution would happen and would be adopted by the government, but because, as you know, the central bank has no power to do it on itself.
No, well, I mean, you are firefighting effectively, but you're just dampening down the flames, but you're not stopping the fire. That's the problem. As you said, Lebanon needs a rescue package from the IMF. I mean, how soon could that be arranged? Because there are elections in the spring, and it's thought they won't break this political deadlock, but could the IMF break the economic deadlock?
Well, as you know, you need a comprehensive package. The timing, as per the decision of the Prime Minister and the government, is to try to be able to go to an MOU with the IMF before the year end. And the pillars for this package that could restore confidence are in fact various. I mean, you start by the budget. The country needs a budget that can give confidence and therefore to decrease the deficits. You have to negotiate with the creditors of Lebanon who are not paid on their euro bonds. On the other side, another pillar is to restructure the banking sector, and then you will end up with a floating rate where the market will decide what is the real value of the dollar on the pound, and I guess it will be less than the figures you're seeing now.
Now, a US delegation, as you know, and you met the delegation, visited in Beirut recently. Did anything come out of that? And if not, what can the rest of the Middle East do to help save Lebanon's economy?
As you know, the United States has been backing Lebanon and its army, essentially. And this backing is important. And as you know, the central bank is maintaining a close relationship with the US Treasury so that Lebanon remains backed at least in the international financial markets. Although because of the default in payment, we are now cut from this market, and that is detrimental because Lebanon is a dollarized economy. Lebanon doesn't have important exports. It doesn't have raw material to export to get foreign currency. So it has to rely on its financial sector to attract dollars into the country. And of course, this with the help of the central bank. So any foreign backing for Lebanon, whether international or regional, is always a plus for the country. For the time being, Lebanon is kind of isolated, living on its reserves, and that's why we are in a hurry to try to break this isolation.
I mean, the tragedy of the story is the economy and how people are coping with that. But there's also a huge irony too, isn't there, Governor? Because Lebanese bankers have always been very highly regarded, not just in the Middle East, but around the world too. So is all of this the fault of those bankers, or are there forces at work that the bankers just couldn't cope with?
Well, the political environment, the Middle East crisis that I have described in this interview, the exogenous challenges that Lebanon had to face, all these elements would lead me to say that you cannot analyze Lebanon and its crisis as if you are looking at the normal country of this world, because Lebanon,
because it faces unique problems. Is that what you mean?
Unique problems that are huge problems, and that are not really only. You cannot summarize these problems to make it only a monetary problem or a fiscal problem. We have our share of responsibility, of course, but we have been living in a country that did not witness any political stability for years.
In October, there was a return to severe violence on the streets of Beirut, which must have reminded you of the worst days of the civil war. The people of Lebanon want a better life, and quickly. Can you take any actions to help the ordinary man and woman on the street of Beirut and elsewhere in Lebanon?
Well, as you know, first we regret that these incidents came back and reminded us of the dark days of the civil war. But this is a demonstration about how fragile is the political stability in the country. The central bank, except for the initiatives that I described to you before to help the people access their money, has no power in order to do other initiatives. But I know that the government is now trying to have a subsidy card that should be launched soon, in order to provide material assistance for those who need it, and that the World Bank is involved in various programs.
We're going to pause there briefly, Governor Salameh, but we'll be talking more after this break as we discuss the economic fallout of Beirut's deadly port blast. Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to The Agenda. More now with the man who's been the governor of the Central Bank of Lebanon for almost 30 years, Riad Salameh. The ordinary man and woman on the street are angry about their economic situation, especially as regards their savings. You've recently handed over an audit of your personal accounts to the Prime Minister. Why did you do that?
Well, I have been seeing a media attack and also plaints filed saying that I am suspected of embezzlement or money laundering and sorts of suspicions. And I found that these were not based on evidences, but they were based on false reports, and I had legal suits that proved that these are false reports. But I thought it was my duty to communicate with everyone, the media and the public opinion, and to have an external opinion on my personal finances. So I contracted an audit firm, BDO Sam'an Ghulam and Company, and they have run an audit on 4 scopes. The first one was the clearing account at the central bank, where the funds that went into that clearing accounts and were transferred outside to a company. One of them is the company that is owned by my brother, that these funds that went into the clearing account that is opened at the central bank, the funds are not originated from the budget of the central bank or from the funds of the central bank, but were originated by the market players themselves according to contracts and agreements. The second scope was about a bank that bought from us papers, and it was said that they don't see how we freely delivered these papers, and doubts or suspicion about if we were paid, and the audit report has confirmed that the funds were paid. The third scope was on my personal finances and my personal account, because I have an account at the central bank being a governor as the law permits it, and it was determined in this audit that my account was segregated from the funds of the central bank, and that at no time money came to my personal account from the central bank. And the fourth scope was to trace the sources of the funds of my investments while I was a governor and while I had people entrusted in doing these investments. I was not active myself on these investments, but the origin of the funds also was determined by this audit report, that they were from my own and personal money. And therefore, you have here an audit that has been conducted, and those who want to create, for any reason, doubts about me and my integrity have now to bring real evidence and not only descriptive material.
So you've answered the accusations, but there have also been accusations against many politicians of not just corruption, but money laundering as well. And how much has the political instability and lack of confidence in the political institutions contributed to this financial meltdown?
I believe that every responsible should do what I have done. I mean, contract an auditor to check his own wells. There are organisms in the country that are in charge, and there are laws in charge to follow on these matters. The legal structure in the country is good. We have an organism to fight money laundering and terrorist financing. We have also laws against illicit enrichment, and the application of of these laws is effectively a joint responsibility between the banks who know their clients, as it is in any country, and the judiciary or the supervisor of the government to look on the public contracts and what there is, if there is behind them corruption. There are many investigations taking place in the country, and as you know, we have also external sanctions that has been implemented, people that have been placed on the OFAC list.
Now, the cabinet was, I think, appointed in the autumn, in September. It hasn't met very often, if at all. But if the cabinet doesn't arrest Lebanon's collapse, which Hezbollah and Amal are possibly making it harder to do, no one will be able to keep the peace, and the chances of an economic recovery widen, don't they?
Well, unfortunately, the new cabinet, which started with a positive dynamic, and you have seen the price of the dollar decline in the parallel market and on Sayrafa, which is the central bank platform, declined to $1 to 14,000 pounds, had this dynamic disrupted again by political problems. They have met 2 times only, but what is, and there is an attempt now to create a consensus so that the cabinet can act as a cabinet normally. Nevertheless, all the ministers and are working in a normal fashion, but the cabinet meetings are not happening.
Transparency, this is all about transparency, isn't it? And it's vital, in fact, of any political system. But no one seems to be taking responsibility for the explosion, that dreadful, murderous explosion that killed several hundred people. Is that lack of accountability and transparency causing yet more division and, perhaps even worse, uncertainty in Beirut?
Well, the tragedy of the blast of the port has affected every Lebanese. And I have also personal friends who were hit. Some died, others were badly injured. And we are all keen to know the truth and to see who is responsible for this tragic event. There is an ongoing investigation, and it is an investigation that is not going smoothly due to political interferences. But I think that the Lebanese will not give up and will want to know what has happened and who is responsible.
Are they likely to get those answers?
Sorry?
Are they likely to get those answers?
I hope so. It's not my prerogative. It's not the central bank that is involved in that. I'm giving you a personal opinion and my personal feelings.
Do you have any hopes that you will be able to recover economically? Forget the political angle for the moment, but economically, is there any light at the end of the tunnel for you at the moment?
Once you have the proper political environment, Lebanon will rebound. I can bring you back to recent history. When we had the civil war, the value of the dollar increased by 1,000 times during at a certain period of that war. the Beirut was destroyed, and the country had no economy. The total deposits in the country were meaningless, not even $9 billion. And yet, once you had confidence again, some political stability, the country rebounded. The GDP increased from 8-9 billion to $55 billion. The currency was stable, and Beirut, as you described it, was regaining its status as a center for banking and even for digital economy. And there were hopes of gas and oil in the sea of Lebanon, and the tourism and service sector were flourishing again. So in its history, if we go to more in the past, Beirut was destroyed many times. You had many wars in the country. You had huge immigration, and yet Lebanon came back every time. I am optimistic of nature, and I like my country, and I hope that the Lebanese will rebuild Lebanon and its economy, because you have to figure out that Lebanon has a strength, and that is the Lebanese working outside, the Lebanese diaspora, and they still send money into the country for their families, but they are also, if they feel confident, ready and have the means to invest in the country.
Riad Salameh, Governor of the Central Bank, many thanks for joining us here on The Agenda.
Thank you very much.
To say Lebanon's economic situation is perilous is perhaps the understatement of the century. Its economy is shrinking by 25% a year. Its currency is collapsing and inflation raging seemingly out of control. And that's prompted many people to leave. And as the governor of the central bank told me, the country is becoming more reliant than ever before on Lebanese workers abroad sending money home. Lebanon needs a rescue package now. The IMF, EU and the United States are all supportive of government plans to rescue the debt-ridden country. But with a similarly fragile political system, few expect any progress soon. And if things don't get better, the impact across the Middle East will be seismic. An economic downturn affects everybody in the region, but especially the poor and the unemployed. And the poorer areas are often where extremists go to recruit. Lebanon is already a tinderbox, and the situation is additionally complicated in a country of 18 officially recognized sects. Riad Salameh told me the current crisis was sparked by the Syrian war, so other Middle Eastern leaders will be watching Lebanon very closely in case complete collapse there sparks something equally violent elsewhere. So, dark days, but Governor Salameh remains optimistic and says Lebanon has been in crisis before and has always rebuilt itself. He doesn't see any reason why the country can't do the same again. The rest of the world can only pray that he's right. Don't forget you can watch everything from past Agenda episodes and find additional exclusive content on our website, cgtn.com/Europe, or on our YouTube channel. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @CGTN Europe. Coming up on a future agenda, from a presidential election in France to the Beijing Winter Olympics, we'll be finding out just what to expect in 2022. But for now, from me, Stephen Cole, and all the Agenda team here in London, it's goodbye.